Thank you. Thanks very much. My name's Don Duggan. I work on the help desk. I just want to thank everybody for coming out today. I know the weather wasn't the best and the traffic, and for you all tuning in late at night, we appreciate you taking the time. So I just hope that today's all your questions get answered, and if not, I just want to say there's email, edrls@fda.hhs.gov, and that's where when you come and you leave here and then you go, oh man, I really wanted to ask that question, just email us. And I will say this, I just want to say this, we do our best to try to get to every question as quickly as we can. And sometimes we will answer questions very quickly. Other times we seem to get inundated, so sometimes it takes a little bit longer. I would say that, usually we ask for about 10 business days. It normally doesn't take that much, okay? But if something's urgent, always let us know, okay? And hopefully, after today, there won't be anything urgent because you'll know what to do. You'll be taking action earlier rather than later. So, all that said, let's see if I can. There we go. So we have some learning objectives. I won't go into the why because Paul did a pretty good job of that. But we want to know the who, when, what, and how of establishment registration. We'd like you to understand the different types of establishment registration, SPLs, and then also be able to discuss how to avoid the most common errors. I will tell you this will not work at a party, though. Nobody wants to discuss this at a party. So it hasn't worked for me. So that's all I'll say. So that's something that we're going to go over right now. So the first thing is who must register. And generally, with the exceptions, few exceptions, things like some pharmacies and hospitals that don't perform any manufacturing processes, any establishment that engages in any manufacturing process, so that's obviously manufacturing, but it's also things like repacking, relabeling, salvaging, and analysis. Analysis if you are doing analysis on a drug that will be sold in the U.S. Let's see. And then I have a link there on this to our website, our instruction page. Very good page, by the way. So when do you register? Well, if you're a domestic establishment, no later than 5 days after you begin manufacture processes. However, we would like you to do it before. But up to 5 days after. As far as a foreign establishment, you must be registered to get your drug into the country. Okay, so, and I'll go over this again, but if the registration isn't correct with the manufacturer, that drug product, you're going to have problems getting it into the country, or you're going to have problems certifying it. So when do you update? Obviously, October to December 31st, so now. And I'll get into all of that, but just whenever you close or sell an establishment, change a name or a physical address, whenever you change the mailing address, the telephone number, or the email, or any kind of contact information, we would like that to happen within 30 days, okay? Because we send out lots of emails. We'll send out reminder emails and all of this kind of thing, and if it's going to the wrong person, it doesn't do any good, and then people are surprised. So we want to avoid that by keeping that information updated. Now, the way it works, if you send in a registration SPL between October 1st and December 31st, that's good until the end of the following year. So if it gets sent in 2019, it means your registration is good all the way till December 31st of 2020. Okay? So that's every time you send it in the renewal period. If you send it from January 1st to September 30th, it's good until the end of the year that it's received. So you send it in on the 30th. We've had this before where someone has sent it in, they're a little, they're all anxious, they want to do the right thing. It comes in on the 30th. And then they go, it didn't change. No, it didn't change because it has to come in on the 1st of October, and that's the way the system works. We don't have to worry about that now. We only have to worry about December 31st now. And then another area where people are somewhat confused, private label distributors, they don't manufacture anything. They don't need to register. Okay? So private label distributors, and that is somebody who has a labeler code and has their name on the outside of the product, or the firm name. They do not register. Okay? Only people that register are people who are performing manufacturing processes, relabeling, repackaging, salvage, manufacturing, of course, and analysis. So as Paul talked about, the registration data is used for inspections and imports. And again, I just want to say again, a product listing SPL will fail validation and therefore certification if the establishment is not registered. So if your drug product has a bad, establishment on there, you're not going to be able to certify that listing, and you're going to have to go back to the manufacturer and let them know what to do. Now, if they have any questions, by all means, give them our email address, and we will help them. Another thing, this is not, what we're talking about today is not GDUFA, the Generic Drug Act, right? It's not that. So there are no fees for this, okay? We don't charge fees. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. And then the other thing is that the first time you register, you're not going to have an FEI number. So what you're going to need to do is, in general, domestic organizations can go ahead and get an FEI by contacting their local district ORA office. That's available on our website. And then foreign manufacturers, if you haven't gotten an FEI number, there is an email, and we'll have that for you. I don't want to spell out an email, but there is an email for that, and we'll get that out to you, the information. So, but generally, it should be 60 days or less. If not, you can let us know, okay? And okay, so the types. There's different types of SPL, and I apologize for slides, but there's 3 different types, and let me just get to mine so I can see it too. I guess I could put on glasses here. Yeah. All right. So there's various types. There's your regular establishment registration, where that's just used for. Okay. So you got the regular one. You have the deregistration, establishment deregistration. You have the no change notification, and finally the out of business. Okay, so there's 4 different types. The regular one you would use the first time or renewal. The second one would be if you're going out of business. The third one, or rather, you're discontinuing manufacturing. Sorry. And then the no change notification is another way to renew. And then out of business is, you're going out of business. So basically, the updates, that's what we're going to talk about a lot. This is the main form that you would fill out. And you see the contact information. That's what's really important to us. Okay? So we go through that, and let's see. I'm sorry. Uh-oh, there we go. Okay, there's that. And this is the part where you've got the main form, and then if you look to the lower right, and you'll go into the CDER Direct, and you'll just go to the establishment registration, okay? And there's a lot of information that comes here, and then when you go ahead and add your establishment, there's more information, and there's a place for the imports at the bottom, so you need to have your importers listed as well. No change notification. This is really nice. If you don't have any changes to your establishment this year, right? Everything's the same. And all you want to do is check that box. You want to do a no change notification SPL, okay? And it's only, though, for 10/1 to 12/31. So if you try to do this in January, it's not going to work, okay? This is what it looks like, and this is why I like it, because it's not hard to do. What it is you're going to have your set ID. Let me just quickly go over what we're talking about here. As far as a little bit of vocabulary. The core ID, I'm going to be talking about the core ID, either comes in, it's the ID that you get when you send something to us. You get a core ID. It's going to either be CI, and that means that you went through the gateway, or CD, which meant you use CDER direct. Just so you know, eDirless cannot work on anything that's been created by Pragmatic or gone through the ESG. We have no access to the ESG. You can't look at anything there. The types of submissions we can help with are the ones that are done with CDER direct, because we do have access to those submissions, okay? So if you ever send in a question about something that's gone through and it's the core ID, because we always have to have the core ID, it'll say CI, we're going to have to refer you to the SPL coordinator, okay? There's also the doc or root ID. That's like that's given, it's a unique ID that's given to every single submission. So every time you send in a new submission, it has to be a new doc or root ID. And then there's the set ID. Set ID is kind of like the address. It's always going to be the same for a type of submission. So your establishment registration submission, you'll always use the same set ID to update it, okay? And the version number, you always want to put one higher version number on your submission. So in this situation, if I'm doing a no change notification, I'm going to need to know my set ID. I'm going to need to know what version I should be at, okay? And if I know those two things, I can put my set ID in, I can put my, my version number in, and my root ID, okay? And I will just generate a new root ID here, okay? So where it says generate, you can just generate that, okay? And then you would go ahead and save it and then submit it, okay? So that's, and then deregistration, you're no longer, it's very similar, at least as far as doing it. You would deregister because you're no longer manufacturing drug products. And again, it looks very similar except for the document type. This deregistration, it's got the same thing though. Set ID, you need to have that. New root ID and the version number that's correct. Now you're still awesome, but you're doing something else now. So you would do an out-of-business SPL. And it's exactly the same. So some tips. Please ensure that your establishment information that you enter is exactly what is in Dun & Bradstreet. That's the way it matches up. It's not a fuzzy match, and so it's not going to work. So if it's road, exactly, just the key is this. Go to Dun & Bradstreet, know what it says, and make sure that that's accurate, and then put that in your establishment registration. Obviously, you want to update your contact addresses because that's very critical. We want to let you know when we want you to do everything right, but if you're not, we want to let you know so we can get it done and taken care of before it becomes a real problem. Multiple establishments can be registered using one establishment SPL. So if you wanted to do all your establishments on one SPL, you can do that, okay? Because you can just keep adding establishments. And today, you can come around, we'll show you how to do that. And we've had people who are trying to work on an establishment SPL, and things are grayed out. If it's grayed out, you're not going to be able to use it. You're going to have to create a new version to edit that SPL. And then, quick word, we get a lot of questions about mergers and acquisitions, and Pui's going to go into that a little bit later. But you need to change everything with us, and that includes the labeler name. So if you change your legal name, you want to change your labeler name, and then you're going to have to go ahead and update all the drug listing SPLs as well to reflect that new name. Okay, so avoid errors. Okay, not to be used as small talk at cocktail parties, but how to avoid errors. Same set ID, a different root ID, and one higher version. Make sure you put in a qualifier, okay? So it's great that your manufacturer tell us what you're manufacturing. Human OTC, animal drugs, what is it? For phone format, because we know we get a lot of phone numbers and they all have different formats. We're looking for things to be formatted in our version, okay? The US version. You can just click on the format in CDER Direct and see the example. It's a standard US example. Generally, we just got this, you can now validate. You can validate before you send it in. So we would encourage you to save your submission and then click on validate to see if there's any errors before you send it in. It's a lot faster than waiting. And then finally, yeah, you do have to click that submit SPL button to get it here. Sometimes, I mean, you know, not everybody's always familiar with types of software that they use because they don't use it every day, and we understand that. So we get people that, you know, just have to remember to click the submit. Now, let's just say the odd thing occurred and you actually got an error. So read the error messages because they're very useful in telling you what needs to be done. They'll tell you if your uni is not correct. They'll tell you all kinds of things. We also understand that not everybody is, you know, a computer whiz, and so sometimes these things can look pretty scary, ugly. So what we tell you to do is to take a screenshot of the error message itself and also the go-to, when you can click on a go-to, and I'm talking about CDER Direct now, you can go to the error so we can see the data that you entered. Because sometimes you might have done something with the data. Maybe you have a comma, maybe you have a hyphen, maybe you don't. And we can see that, but we can't tell you just by an error message all the time, okay? And then also provide the core ID. So screenshots and a core ID, and that's what we need. Now, if you use Pragmatic, then you're or if you send it through the ESG, and that's the CI core ID. It starts with CI. If it's that, you need to contact the SPL coordinator at spl@fda.hhs.gov, okay? Because again, we don't have access to those. Finally, to see if you did this right, to see if it's correct, you can go to the DECR's or the Drug Establishment's current registration site, and it will have a list and everything there that you can see your company there, so you can rest assured. I will say this: if you send in your submission and it doesn't happen immediately, do not be surprised. Give it 24, 48 hours, okay? Because it takes time. They run things in batch process, and if you hit just over, and if you just missed it, then it's going to take another 24. So we're not sure when you're going to send it in, so we say 24 to 48. If it's beyond that, contact us, okay? Providing, and if there's any error, contact us. It's helpful to give us all the information about the submission. So the core ID and, your knowledge that it was accepted and that kind of thing. And you give that to us because there have been occasionally issues getting our data to the web display. The data is actually in our database. And we have it, and it's right. But sometimes there's a problem getting it onto the web. There's all kinds of things going on. And when that happens, you'll see a delay. So just let us know, because I really appreciate it myself, because I then, we can fix the problem. Because if you're having a problem, other people might be having it too. And the database doesn't have the 503B registrants. For that, you need to go to the outsourcing facilities. You will see a compounder on this list if they are a regular manufacturer, and they need to do that also. But if they're solely a compounder, they will be on the outsourcing facilities only. And wholesale distributors, third-party logistic providers, they are not included as well. So we got some challenge questions here, and I'm not sure how these go. So just ask this first one: should private label distributors register before listing their product? No? Are you sure? I hate that one again. Sure? Right. They should never register. Okay? Let me ask you this: true or false? Will the product listing SPL fail validation or certification if the establishment is not registered? That's right. So, now that doesn't mean they have to register for this year. It means in the past. So if I look at today at their registration, it's got to be current. And you will find that out if anything does come back. You should follow up with us. Regarding establishment registration, the rule is only one establishment per SPL. You could do many. You could do as many as you want. So, okay, I guess I passed. So finally, for any questions, edurlis@fda.hhs.gov. Again, it's our busy season. Please be patient. We will do everything we can to get it done. And there's just talking about pragmatic again in the SPL coordinator, our instruction page. And if you haven't seen the listing instructions page, it's a real good page to go to, and points and contacts. Thank you very much. And I guess we'll take questions after Pui's presentation. Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Puii Huber, and this morning I will be going over labor code requests. Here's an overview of what we will be getting into. We will get started with what a labor code is, who should apply for a labor code, when and how to apply for a labor code, and then we'll go over some reasons why a labor code is rejected and what you can do to avoid those rejections. And then we'll move on to some common errors and with mergers and acquisition with the labor code and what to do with it. So this slide is probably a review for most of you, but for those of you in attendance that are not familiar with the NDC structure, I will quickly go over it. So the NDC, the National Drug Code, is divided into 3 segments. The first one that's highlighted here is the labor code. The labor code is assigned by the FDA, and it identifies the company. The second set that was just highlighted in blue is the product code, and this identifies the dosage and strength of a product. And the package code identifies the package type or size. So the product code and package code numbers both are proposed by the firm, but the labor code is assigned by the FDA. Labor code requests must be submitted when first introducing a product into commercial distribution. And as you can see here, drug listing must be submitted within 5 days. So it is important that you submit, request, and complete your labor code process prior to drug listing. If you do not have any products to list, you should not apply for a labor code. One question that we get is for drug sponsors and application holders. If you are not involved in any manufacturing or processing or marketing of the drug, you're not required to register or list, so you should not apply for a labor code. And any labor code that is not used for purpose of drug listing will automatically be inactivated within 24 months. So if a company has multiple establishments, multiple sites, so for example, if you have a site in New Jersey and you have another site in Delaware, you don't need 2 labor codes. You only need 1 labor code. As I mentioned earlier, it's each site, the New Jersey site and the Delaware site, will have its own DUNS or FEI number, but labor codes are assigned to the company, not to the sites. So this is one of the common questions we get about labor code. So how to request for a labor code? The first step would be to go into CDER Direct and click on the NDC labor code request document. And since you are requesting a new labor code, it is very important that you leave this labor code field blank. Once you enter your labeler details, contact address, make sure if you're requesting a new labeler code, this is blank. This is not blank. NA is not blank. We've had issues in the past on occasion about this field, so I just wanted to emphasize that. If you enter any value, like 0, for example, this is the error message you will receive. So remember to leave it blank. In step 4, we'll find out what we use this field for, but like I said, since we're requesting it, it should be blank. And so if you scroll down the CDER Direct page, once you enter the labeler contact details, and under country, if you click on a country outside of the United States, it is highly suggested that you enter the US agent information. Now you will notice there's an optional, anything that's additional labeler details is optional. This is optional, but if you do enter this information, it will expedite your labeler code process if you enter all the information. If you opt not to enter this information, this is step 2. If you opt not to enter this information, you will receive an email that looks like this, asking the point of contact for the labeler with information about the company, the name of the company, the address, DUNS, the type of business, the type of drugs that will be listed under the labeler code, and any US agent information. Now it's important while you enter this information in CDER Direct or in the email that the physical address should not be a PO box. And this is very important too. This is the #1 reason a labeler code is rejected. The physical address of the firm must match the information in DNB. So before you request for a labeler code, you should probably look in Dun & Bradstreet and make sure that the address that you have matches. Okay, so once FDA evaluates this information and it all looks good, this is a letter, a labeler code assignment letter. You will receive something that looks like this, but please make sure that you allow at least 7 to 10 business days for your labeler code to be processed. If you email us the next day or 2 days later, you might hear from this guy telling you that it takes 7 to 10 business days. Yeah. And if you're wondering why it takes 7 to 10 business days, it's because we're answering all the status requests for your labeler code. Okay, so your labeler code is assigned, and you get the assignment, right? The step 4, this is very important. Most of you, would think, okay, I have my labeler code, assignment letter, I'm good to go. I can list my product. But you're wrong. This is the step 4. This is very important. Unless you complete this process, you will not be able to list your drugs. So you go back into your labeler code request, and now you're going to use that field that was supposed to be blank. You're going to put in your labeler code and then revise it and resubmit it. Unless you do this, you will not be able to list your drugs. If you attempt to list your drugs without completing the step 4 process, this is the error message you will get in CDER Direct for your product listing. Okay, I've gone through some of this already, but here are some of the reasons why a labeler code is rejected. #1, as I mentioned earlier, if you are not required to list a drug, if you're a drug application holder or sponsor, if you already have a labeler code assigned for one site, like I mentioned earlier, your labeler code will be rejected. If you were assigned a labeler code in the paper system, your labeler code will be rejected because there's a way to reactivate that old labeler code. Or if it was, we will let you know, but that's one of the reasons. And then if your labeler code was automatically inactivated, do not apply for another labeler code. You can email us and we will reactivate that old labeler code. And then This is important if your information, as I mentioned, does not match what's in DNB, it will be rejected. So make sure you check the Dun & Bradstreet, the address you have with them, and then what you enter should match. And then if you're a veterinary drug manufacturer or distributor, our wonderful colleagues over in CVM will be able to help you if you submit using the NDC labeler code request that says animal drug. Okay. Any labeler information, including the physical address, email, and other information, must be updated within 30 calendar days. Donald already mentioned as well with establishment, this is important. This is not an annual requirement, but I suggest that you treat this as an annual requirement because FDA uses this information for any communication regarding your listing. So if you do not receive an FDA communication due to an outdated contact information, it does not relieve you from requirements subjected in that communication. So for example, if you received a deficiency letter, the person does not work there anymore, you will still move forward with the next steps. So this is very important. Please review your labeler contact information, especially in the past couple of weeks. If you have not received an email from eDurlist, you probably have a bad email address. So it is a business decision at the time of a merger or acquisition to transfer or keep your labeler code or any NDCs acquired. So for example, Company A and B are merging and they're changing their name to Company C. In addition, they have decided to keep Company A's labeler code. Here's what Company A should do. They must update their labeler code information to include the new name and any other updates, contact, any other information that needs to be updated. Next, the drug listing must be updated. Even though they're using the same labeler code, the labeler name has changed. So all the drug listings associated must be updated. And now here's what Company B would have to do. They would have to discontinue all the drug listings associated to their old labeler code. They would have to relist the listing under Company C's labeler code, and at the end, their labeler code must be inactivated. So to recap what we've learned, we're going to go through some challenge questions. The first one is, if a company has 3 establishments, how many labeler codes do they need? 1, 2, or 3? Second question, labeler code information, including the name, physical address, email address, and any other information, must be updated within 60, 90, 30 days, or every June and December. Correct. Application holders, this is true or false, that perform no manufacturing process are required to obtain a labeler code. Correct? That is all I have.